All right.
Belton braces.
So Bruce, welcome. Thank you for coming. You've just done a workshop with my master students on directing and cinematography, working with actors. How did you sort of find that this moment?
I think the discovery moment for me was gradual. I don't think anybody that goes into filmmaking, you might have a kind of idea that you want to be a director or an actor or one of those very top level things. But for me, I started taking photographs around where I used to live. And the reason I did that was because I was unemployed. And I thought, okay, someone suggested I take some pictures where I lived, so I did. And that camera allowed me access into communities that I wouldn't normally have access to. And I really enjoyed the fact that I could go into all these different worlds. In fact, I was protected with the camera. And I found I was able to communicate a class of people, a world of people that were different from me, and I was able to communicate that to an audience. So on doing that, I had a couple of exhibitions, and
so is this sort of documentary style photograph?
It was street photography,
right?
And that naturally then extended out to documentary, because I found that the people that were coming to the galleries to look at the photographs weren't the people I wanted to necessarily communicate with. I wanted to communicate with a much broader audience. And so then I applied to a film school after that.
So had you done photography?
No.
So how old were you when you picked up a camera?
19.
Right.
I'd left home and I wanted to find something to do. And back then, if you were unemployed, you could get yourself on all sorts of schemes. And back then it was a youth training scheme, or YTS scheme.
Yeah, I remember the YTS, yeah.
And I was able to not only pick up a camera, but also go into a dark room and develop my own film and develop my own, print my own pictures, which obviously now it's all digital. But that does teach you a great deal of things in terms of entering different communities and asking permission to take photographs or whatever it might be. And but it also enabled me to understand image and composition.
Well, you're telling story on
writing as well, you know. So all of those things are really important. So then I went to film school in Newcastle,
right,
and started making documentary films. And I made a documentary film in my final year, which was then it got an award, RTS award, a newcomer award. And before I knew it, I was living in London, working at what was then ITV London Weekend Television, making documentaries. So my journey into making films was relatively quick, as in, although I was a bit older in terms of, you know, picking up a camera, I was working very quickly in a way that wasn't necessarily helpful because I didn't really know what kind of filmmaker I was then. And so making those documentaries, working for Janet Street Porter, who, for those that don't know who she was, she was, you know, she created a thing for youth programs and MTV, which is now defunct. So I was making very, very, I suppose, what was considered to be quite cutting edge, youth orientated television. And that, I suppose YouTube has kind of replaced that in many ways.
So this is like mid-80s, is it?
Mid to late 80s.
Yeah, because Janet Street Porter was sort of 83, 84.
She created this whole thing called Def 2.
And there was the Tube, and there was all these kind of youth.
I was that director, doing that sort of thing.
Right.
It was a lot of fun. I did a lot of music documentaries.
So, but you're doing documentary, but you're also doing like VTs and inserts for the live shows, because a lot of that TV would have like a live, like the Tube was live on a Friday, and then they'd have insert stories that would go in.
What would be called VT inserts, videotape inserts.
Yeah.
So yes, I was responsible for those to start off with, and then I was invited to be the main director of the shows in order to create a look and a feel for the whole thing, which, you know, you can be. It's like in TV drama. You can start being the original director, the first block director, where you literally create the look and the feel of the show. Second block director follows the first block director's work. It was a bit like that. So for shows like Reportage, for instance, I would create the look for the entire show, etc. And then other directors would come in and shoot in that same style.
So what's interesting is you're working, there's quite a lot of short form stuff, but there's also like long form stuff as well. Yes, but you're not doing like a classical documentary hour or hour and a half.
Well, that came
afterwards.
So I did that for a period of time. Then I was asked to make a longer form piece, which was almost like the Turning Point, which was a film, which is a feature doc film with bits of drama in there, which is called SAS Iranian Embassy Siege, which was the story of the Iranian Embassy Siege, but there wasn't enough footage of the preparation of the event, because obviously it was a siege. So you've got siege, which is doc drama structure. Trying to get inside the heads of the SAS at the time, or even the terrorists at the time. But one of the biggest influences on me was a film called Thin Blue Line, which is by Errol Morris, which is basically the story of being wrongfully accused of the murder of someone. But through the filmmaking, the murderer, the filmmaker proved that the murderer, the person that had been accused of murder, wasn't actually the murderer. So they found the real murderer in making the film, and that made me think, wow, that is a super powerful thing, that you can actually do more than the law in filmmaking. You can, in documentaries, people can admit to doing things. What's the one with the man?
Yeah, and then they caught him going for a pee, and they heard, I can't remember.
Anyone know? Anyone can remember that? No.
I remember the story.
So the power of documentary, that you can sit and talk to someone like this, and they would tell you something that they wouldn't tell anybody else.
So that's, I mean, in a way, that's you sort of almost you've started in a kind of documentary thing where you said the key to you doing that is accessing communities and people that you wouldn't get to access. You've kind of gone off into TV, mainstream TV, and then you're coming back to that original interest, which is the sort of the ability to go and, see places and meet people that you'd never get, which is the thing from my career that I always value most is, students often ask me, who's the most significant person you filmed, right? And like, my dad wanted an autograph when I worked with David Attenborough. My mum wanted one when I worked with John Travolta, right? And never the twain shall meet. I think we went to see Grease like 3 times when I was a kid. Probably not allowed to be there, but my mum was taking us. Anyway, the person that really sticks out in my memory is a 15-year-old girl who was being filmed from a program called Britain's Youngest Mums, which was like a horrible, exploitative thing. But I had to go and spend a week with her. Now, she's got a 1.5-year-old and she's pregnant again, she's 15. And if you know what the papers and everyone's gonna think about that person, and you might be carrying some of those prejudices with you, but you can't take them with you into that room because you've got to have a relationship, and that's really special, I think.
It is. There's a lot of trust involved. I think one of the things that I always, whenever I speak to any new filmmakers, and the thing that I carry with me totally through my career from documentary to drama, feature films, etc., is always the curiosity. You've got to have the curiosity to tell a story. And some things excite you more than other things. And it could be, Fast and Furious, or it could be, the documentary documentary we can't remember the name of. So it's sort of like understand every action you take, every piece of filming or writing or whatever that you do, you learn something about yourself as a filmmaker. So me as a filmmaker, the age of these guys, I was a completely different filmmaker then than I am now. So there's no reason why you should have to make the same film over and over again.
No.
Your curiosity remains the same, but what are you now curious about?
And it's also being curious about people. But I think if you want to be a good documentary maker, like even if you're filming the murderer who is pretending they haven't murdered someone and you know they've murdered, you've still got to have a human relationship with them.
I don't think you should ever treat anyone as a monster. So as you can see from some of those credits, Murdered by My Father, the Bella Ramsay film, these are characters that have been demonised by society. Fathers that murder their daughters. You know, someone that was married to a suicide bomber who then becomes, radicalised herself. I'm interested in those characters that can help us understand why people do what they do. I'm less interested in the victims of those characters. They're important and they need to be recognised, but something has happened to them. They haven't invited it, it's happened to them. So their story to me is less interesting than the story of someone that does the action. Because I want to understand how we can prevent it, protect it, we're all responsible for it. So my move, if you like, from documentary drama was simply to be able to get inside that moment. You can't do that in documentary, right?
Right.
In documentary, you're always looking back to some degree.
And you're kind of tied by what you can film and...
Well, you are, but also at the same time, you're always filming people where the trauma has already happened. Unless you're doing Fly on the Wall, where you can...
Where the changes happen.
Where you can see things happening, people having arguments and falling out or whatever. Ultimately, you're asking people to relive the most traumatic event of their life. Okay? Or acknowledge that it was traumatic, or acknowledge that they committed a crime. You're almost compelling people to do something pretty awful. I found that I couldn't do that anymore. So I couldn't sit opposite someone and know that there's a whole machine out there wanting me to make that person cry or make that person admit to something that's very painful for them. Because nothing happens after the event. There's nobody sitting there going, how did that make you feel? Can I put you back together again? No. We break you apart, we put you on telly or film, people enjoy it, we might learn something about it, but ultimately, I've done something to you.
Re-traumatised.
I've re-traumatised you. So I found that I couldn't do that anymore. I had enough of making people cry or making people traumatised. So, whereas with actors, it sort of doesn't matter. It does. You don't want to brutalise an actor, but they have the capacity and the training, in some cases, to put it back together again. So if they've done something emotional or traumatised...
That's part of the job. There's a certain compartmentalisation.
They're able to put it back together again. So I was able then to make work where I can invite an audience to understand that turning point, that difficult moment, why that happened. Whereas a documentary, I wasn't able to do that. I mean, some documentaries can, but it's already happened.
Yeah, unless you're filming while it happens, which is like capturing the Freedmans is a little bit like that.
So all of the blue light things that you see, like 24 hours in custody, 24 hours in Emmy.
Yeah, I did a lot of that.
They're opening up, people at their most traumatised. They've just had a car accident or they've just murdered someone.
Yeah. No.
It's like, oh, great, let's watch that. That's great.
Yeah. There's something a little bit. Yeah, when I started off working, I worked for German television, and German television is privately owned, so they have these 3 channels, Sat.1, ZDF, and one other, and they all have a 6 o'clock news show where. I'm not even joking or exaggerating, but if you had like a 25-stone woman married to a small person covered in tattoos, that would be their lead story, or pole dancing, or it was really, really horrific.
Nothing's changed.
No.
Who watches reels? We all watch reels, right?
Yeah.
You know, I got myself into a wormhole of watching car accidents.
Really?
People getting beaten up for real.
But my wife was watching hamsters a lot.
Yeah.
That was. But the point was.
Were they dressed up hamsters?
No. But I can send you the links if you want. But the point was that I'm working with that journalist, and they literally viewed anyone who wanted to go onto television as just being fair game. He told me that when you had a child murder, a child had been murdered in a town, as a journalist, so this is before the internet, you would find through your sources the surname of the child. Then you would go to the phone book and phone everyone in that town who had that surname until somebody picked up the phone and broke down. And then you would drive to their house, straight away knock on the door and say, we want to do an interview, we want to tell the truth about your child. And then you'd set up and film, and as soon as the mum had cried, you were done. And I was just like, wow. And so, I mean, that's a different level, because we're talking about like extremely salacious news that is literally, they would get the ratings, and then the next day they would go, we hit that point on that story, you know, because that was the story. I did 2 weeks of flood stories in England, because we'd go out, we'd find somebody who would be like, oh, well, never mind, it's only a bit of flooding, I'm going to go and, you know, and then they'd be like, look at these crazy Brits. And that ran for 2 weeks because it was all driven by ratings. And at that point, I was like, I don't want any part of this kind of thing. So there is, I mean, it feels like there's a bit more ethics around now,
well,
but
there are regulations.
Yeah.
We have Ofcom regulations, but you know, you've all seen Baby Reindeer, probably, right? Now, Baby Reindeer, I watched it, thought it was pretty good, but then the disclaimer was, this is a true story. So there's a pact that you have with your audience. If you think you're going to see a true story, then you believe what you're going to see. If then you find out that actually that was not a true story, and that woman did not commit that crime and didn't go to prison, you break that pact. So that was a lie. Now I find that deeply troubling in this day and age, that you can lie that much. It doesn't take away from the veracity of the drama, it was interesting, but you can't lie.
it's not a true story.
My work is all true stories in some way, shape or form, dramatised in some way, shape or form. So to have someone out there saying that something is a true story when it's not, it's also undermining of the woman. Yes, she had her problems, mental problems, I would say. She had health problems, but they made her look and sound just like the woman that was in part of the story. Even though they said they'd made great attempts to try and make her sound and look different, they didn't. They made her look and such. She doesn't speak with an accent. She speaks with the accent of the person she's playing. Yeah. So all those efforts weren't made. I find that you've got to have a conversation with your audience that's based on trust. So if you're saying they're going to watch a true story, I want to know that if it's based on, inspired by, all bets are off. It's a drama.
Yeah.
You know, some of the characters and situations have been changed. It's a drama.
Yeah.
Sure, those people might, you know, some of those things may have happened. Some of them may have happened in that way. Who knows? Who knows what happens behind closed doors? But I mean,
there's also a fundamental contradiction in the act of filmmaking, that the minute that you record something, well, you're not recording something else. You're making a choice. The minute you start editing, you're choosing which bits of what you've recorded to choose. So there's that pact of trust becomes really important, right? Because the audience is trusting you to adhere to the truth.
Well, the thing is that when you're making a story that's based on people that are living, right? Whether it be a crime story or whatever it might be, and you name them, they have an identity outside of your film. They have a reality outside of your film. And so whatever you've chosen, because obviously someone's life is 20 odd years, 30 odd years, 40 odd years, and you're distilling it down to 90 minutes or 2 hours. You're making lots of choices all the time, right? And those choices need to be dramatic to keep your audience interested. So of course you're going to make choices, but it's your job as a filmmaker, as a producer, or as a director, or whatever, to then go to those real people and say, these are the choices I'm making about your life. Are you okay with that? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay? So they don't get a big shock when they see that you've portrayed them completely differently to how they, in their essence, are. And that word essence is quite important, because that's all you can do, is create an essence of authenticity.
So how do you feel about Werner Herzog then?
In what sense?
In the sense that he's quite kind of clear that he doesn't care what the actual truth is.
What you mean in his dramas or docs?
Well, in both. I mean, I've heard him speak a couple of times, and he's very clear that what matters to him is being true to the story, not necessarily be true to the events. So a classic example is the documentary he did about the cult of Jesus is in Siberia after the collapse of the Russian, the USSR. There was this explosion of people claiming to be Jesus, and it was tied in with the repression of the Orthodox Church. But he filmed a scene with a woman in front of a lake, and there were these guys prostrating themselves in the background, and you think that they're religious doing it. And he said, no, these are two guys I got from a bar and gave them a bottle of vodka to do. You know what I mean? He said, I don't care that they weren't, it makes the story work. So,
well, film is not necessarily a bunch of events stuck together.
No.
I agree with that. It is about what it is you want to say as a filmmaker. Any person here with that same story would do it completely differently, because everyone has a fingerprint that's completely different. We'll all describe things completely differently. I described that blue probably quite different to you described that blue, although describing blue is quite hard. But you get my point.
Yeah.
Actually, everybody has a very particular way of describing a story. We're all attracted to different things. Werner Herzog is interested in that thing. But I would suggest that he creates an authenticity in his relationships with those people and with that story. So you can't separate Werner Herzog from it.
No.
Like you can't separate Nick Broomfield from his films. You can't separate some filmmakers that have a very particular, Yorgos Lanthimos has a very particular type of feel.
Yeah, I mean, I've always felt with Herzog or with Broomfield that there's a bit more, they're kind of honest about their relationship in a way, but I don't.
Absolute bollocks.
You really?
Absolute bollocks.
Why do you say that? What I mean is that they're acknowledging their presence.
I would say Werner Herzog is more honest.
Nick Broomfield less.
Some of this out, but
I
would say that Nick Broomfield is more about him and less about the subject.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is that there's a tendency to think, well, if you put the voice of the filmmaker in, and then you're being more honest. But because a filmmaker whose voice is not in it is making just as many choices about what they control going into the story, but at least
we're having a conversation.
Yeah.
We're not cutting you out. Okay.
Well, we might. We'll have to see
It's a
whether.
conversation, right?
Yeah.
We're having a conversation. Therefore, it's about that relationship. The relationship becomes the important thing, not necessarily the thing that we're talking about, although that is important too. But it's also about how I'm suggesting that may not be true, and you're suggesting it is true, and somewhere this audience, whoever they're going to be, will make their decision. Yeah,
I guess I just have a problem with documentary filmmakers who. Well, no, whether or not you like it or you don't like it, it's sort of, Louis Theroux, Nick Broomfield, that style of presenter can be very revealing because of the relationships.
Completely. I love, all of those filmmakers that put themselves in them will take you on a bit of a journey. That if you like them and you identify them, they're asking the questions in a way that you want them to ask.
But also, at the same time, I feel slightly ambivalent about a director who's seamlessly invisible, because you're not.
Yeah.
That's a form of pretense that is also enjoyable to watch because you just go, oh, I'm watching this thing. And
I mean, look, the presence of the filmmaker, whether it's documentary or drama, you can be the sort of person that goes, I just wanted to speak for itself, and slightly disingenuous because you are making choices about what gets edited, what shot size you use, etc. You are subtly making, but you are making decisions. Some filmmakers like Ken Loach, for instance, are all about being observational and about honesty, and the director not being massively auteurish, where there are other filmmakers like Yorgos Lanthimos who wants you to feel him being there. Ken Loach doesn't want you to feel the filmmaker. Goddard was also, I don't want you to feel the filmmaker. I want to change my style every time I make a film, which became his thing as well. So it's kind of an impossible thing to escape because you are making decisions all the time.
Yeah.
But some want you to see the character and the story in a way that they want to make themselves invisible, which I think is a really, really dignified thing to be doing. Like, you're the audience, I want to respect you. Now there is those on the other end, like an absolute artifice. There's a few daisies.
Have you seen Johnson's Dead?
No.
That's a friend of mine, Kirsten Johnson, who made it. And she sets out, her dad gets Alzheimer's, and so she sets out to kill him in as many different ways as possible, using stunt.
Yes, I have.
Yeah, I think that's kind of that rare mix of like an honest, kind of
personal filmmaking.
Really strong.
And it's often people who struggling with the identity of their parent who's now got Alzheimer's or something where they're separated. It's interesting. There's a lot of filmmakers doing that.
Yeah.
But no, it's like the act of killing. Very similar. How do you get into something as horrible as what those men did, and help them recognise and somehow face their own sense of guilt, which
in a sense they never do at the end. Yeah, no, it's really interesting, and I think I don't have. I like Grizzly Man, but I do find myself kind of laughing at it because he's so preposterous in it. Herzog is anyway. So it's a sort of, as a documentary, we both come from a documentary background, and then I've done a lot of docudrama and done a bit of drama and stuff like that. And there is a particular kind of sensibility, I think, that you bring to it because you've come through that route. So it would be good to just talk a little bit about how you transition from the sort of documentary side into drama, because it sounds like you're doing real stories in drama.
There's when something is purely made up, and I watch it, I'm not as invested because I know that it didn't really happen, and it's a strange thing in me that where I look at it and go, yeah, it's entertaining, I like it, but it doesn't feel like it speaks to me in a way where I'm learning something new about humanity. Right? So my move from doc to drama was in order to try and get into those worlds of jeopardy where an audience is both excited but also in fear of what might happen next, and that can somehow make an audience just feel extraordinarily empathetic towards that person, whether they're good or bad, because you're creating a sense of fear or a sense of shame or a sense of excitement.
So do you, if you're
which you can't do in a documentary.
Yeah, but do you use somebody in your team who is kind of responsible for fact checking the original?
Always, yeah. So you run the race already. So just as an example, so with say the Bella Ramsay film that I've written, I've almost completely made the documentary 3 or 4 times before I put pen to paper.
Mm.
So the kind of research involved, the people I have to talk to,
Interviews.
I record them, interviews, and that becomes my raw material to which I then go, okay, I'm interested in that, and that. That's the story I would like to tell. So I kind of already made the documentary before I put pen to paper.
And do you script it from from the interviews and all that? Because we have, in a couple of weeks' time, we have Mary Jane Mitchell, who's a documentary director and has just started working with Paul Greengrass. She did The Lost Bus, and that was her role. Was you gathered all the interviews, you're on set. If something's not true, you need to tell us.
Greengrass is a perfect example. He has come from World in Action documentaries. His first film was awful, and he knows it was awful. And he was working with Kenneth Branagh and fell out with him big time. And then realised that his whole thing wasn't that. It was handheld camera, quite long lenses, keep it quite active, and real stories. He found his voice after a really awful experience with Branagh.
What was that film?
His first film, I can't remember what it was called.
Right.
Where Branagh pretty much took over because he could see and sense that this director hadn't got a clue how to work with actors and hadn't really got a sense of his own camera movement thing. And Branagh, of course, had done a lot of directing at the time. So it meant that it made Greengrass a better filmmaker because of that awful experience.
Yeah, which is often the case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Branagh's pretty scary to direct. I've directed him. And, it's like he's a really brilliant director, so you've got to be sure what you're saying is going to land.
Because otherwise you're going to get interrogated.
He's going to think you're a fraud and a fool.
Yeah. And I bet he doesn't suffer fools gladly.
He doesn't, no.
So what was the point at which you
changed?
Yeah, I mean, was it an active choice where you were like, I'm done on all this exploitative stuff and I want to do it differently, or was it a story that took you, or?
It was a kind of graduation. I think the first full drama I did was Silent Witness, which was for BBC One, which I didn't like at all because I had the vain idea that the director was important, and the director is not important.
It's a machine, Silent Witness.
You're fitting into an already existing format. So I found that a very dispiriting experience. So I thought, okay, that's not for me. And then the next opportunity I had to do full drama was, I think it was My Murder with John Boyega. Young John Boyega, pre-Star Wars John Boyega.
Yeah.
But again, it was a story about knife crime and about, whether a group of individuals is responsible for that one death. Yes, they are. And that was a real story. I interviewed the woman whose son had been stabbed, Shakila Townsend's mom, and from that, I bookend the film with an interview from her, beginning and end, and then tell the whole story. So still very much at its core was documentary in terms of the way that it worked, but it was taking the event and turning that into a kind of real-time journey.
And you are, by framing it, you are saying this is based on a true story.
Sorry?
So then...
I wouldn't even say based, I'd say this is.
Yeah.
I would actually be quite bold and say this is, and look, and here is the woman whose son was killed.
Well, and it's a technique, obviously, like Band of Brothers is the same, right? It's like...
So that is based, that isn't true. As in there are a whole bunch of things that,
are dramatised.
Are a little bit more exciting.
Yeah. But it's based on a true story. Yeah. So you started with the John Boyega knife crime, and did you find that you were then being, because I'm from a documentary background, quite often when I've been asked to do drama, it's because of that, where somebody wants to not put 1,000 lights up and then turn half of them off, but wants to, what have we got in the room? We've got a light and a window, how do we build that? Did you find that because of your background, you were then being pulled towards certain work, or were you attracted to it?
The expectation was that I was going to be handheld camera, no lights, you know, making it look like a faux documentary. That isn't what I did. Because I think just because a drama might look like a documentary doesn't make it any more meaningful. You're using it as a technique. You're trying to kid the viewer, Greengrass style, that they're watching a documentary when actually not, they're watching a film. So I wanted to use all the things that film afforded me, you know, cranes, big lights, big actors, you know, and just sort of properly, sure it's a true story, but there's no reason why I need to switch the lights off.
No.
You know, there's no reason for that whatsoever. I'd like for you to be in a cinematic space. The reason we watch drama is because it's a cinematic space, it's exciting. You're creating a whole new look for things. You know, every film has a different kind of feel and a look and a fabric. And I didn't want to make it look like a documentary. The story is documentary, but the look is not. You know, you've seen the reel. Have you seen the reel?
No, these guys haven't seen the reel. No.
Do you want to see the reel?
Is there something worrying you?
No. You trusted her.
We are rolling.
Come on in! I am just a man.
No!
Tipping on the wire. Tightrope walking fool. Balanced on desire.
Fall back!
Tu colegi aggressivi, ma.
Idź! On na wód!
How can I be sure? Feeling will remain.
Sam, get off the boat.
Everything I am
He's my son!
is yours.
What a fucking rotter!
Everything I am
Man down, man down. It's the worst thing you can hear as a soldier.
is yours.
Have you got? Have you got? Right now!
I felt that if we could get bin Laden, we could dismantle Al-Qaeda.
There was no evidence ever of us being involved in the murder of Daniel Morgan. What's difficult about that?
I'm gonna show you some photographs.
No, he isn't there. Kevin isn't one of them.
Just take your time. Take your time.
Find it hard to say
To hell with the British. To hell with Colin Powell.
what's going on inside.
It's a simple private matter.
Got these little walls. I couldn't break them if I tried.
The stark reality of what combat really was all about had slapped us all in the face.
It was just surreal. And you're looking at these full-grown men and there's tears running down their faces.
I haven't seen most of that footage myself.
Is this scene taken? Don't worry, man. Ain't got no gun, no knife, just muscle.
Oh, hi. Oh, God, you're not expecting us.
Nonsense. We can rustle something up.
Sure.
Well, we've got the kids in tonight, so there'll be plenty of food. It'll be fun.
It's everything I am is yours.
Oh, you're shy.
Everything I am is yours. Left my demons at the door.
Just a white paper now.
Justice. Justice for the 96. We fight every battle.
We are going into Iraq to liberate and not to conquer.
You tread lightly there.
Make no mistake, ladies. This is our time. 2.
We got this. You and me will smash it.
There was a scene where with Maxine Peake going to do some identification of the
photos.
So if I hadn't done documentary, I would never have had the presence of mind to invite anybody who is a survivor of Hillsborough to tell me what that looked like and felt like. Because you can't just make that stuff up.
No.
You've got a responsibility to the death of those people. So you have to be totally scrupulous in what you're doing in a documentary way. And then bring your actor into that space who sees those pictures and feels like the people who would have had to identify those dead people. So the confluence between documentary and drama is super tight there. It's very realistic to what happened. The feeling. So you talk about Werner Herzog.
Yeah.
It's a feeling. That's what you want. You know, that's the and I would doubt that a drama director that hadn't done documentary would have achieved that. They'd have done it differently. It would have been slightly different, but it wouldn't have had that sense of presence. It was in Liverpool. Those people were all survivors, family that were in those pictures that had offered themselves as background artists to be those corpses. So it's like there's something in the documentary fabric of it that makes that actor do the things that she's doing, because I help her performance by saying those things. And that's what you're doing. You're trying to just create the right situation to create the most authentic performance you possibly can do.
And also, I mean, there's if you have documentary, you always have a fallback.
Yeah.
If you have a scene and you're like really pushed for time, you know. I mean, I had a drama that I was filming, and we got to like 20 minutes before wrap. First AD and director have a head-to-head. First AD storms off. We've got horses, we've got actors, we've got fires burning, and the sun setting. And they were like, we can't shoot the scene. The first AD's walked off. It's been a big drama. I went, look, just get the actors, do it, and I'll film it. I filmed the whole thing, and I was like, right, one more take, did it again. And on those 2 takes, they were able to edit the scene, because as a documentary, I knew I've shot that on the last pass, I'm going to focus on something else this time. So there's always that sort of having that in reserve.
Always having that in reserve, yeah. You've got the capacity to be able to make it up on the ground. All of the chutney of production.
Yeah, and there's a lot of chutney in production.
There's a lot of chutney in drama, for sure.
Yeah, cool. So if you had, obviously we're seeing an industry that's just in what I view as a kind of transition for the media, in the sense that I work in documentary, and a lot of the space in documentary is being taken up by podcasts. And why would you spend, you know, I worked on a documentary series, well, I did a feature doc that was 3 million for an hour and a half, 350,000 for an hour, 3 million for an hour of natural history, and that can't compete with 3 people sat in a room talking for a day and giving you 4 hours of content. So I think we're seeing a shift in the media. How are you viewing that from your perspective? What's going on?
Big question.
Big question.
The podcast acts in a way, in almost a sort of like an article used to. Like, I now look at podcasts and think, oh, I'd love to turn that into a film or a drama. It's a very good way of creating intellectual property, IP. The things that I make fact-based dramas. I need IP. I need podcasts. I need
stories.
I need stories. I need people. And so the podcast is now a really fascinating and interesting way, the good ones, because there are some bad ones where people just sit in the studio talking absolute crap and fill loads of time, whereas the good ones can actually access stories, because remember that not everybody wants to do this and be on camera. It's quite intimidating. So there are, it now reaches different types of stories, in my view, the positive ones, where people who don't want to be seen but do want to be heard might tell you things in a way that they wouldn't if they were on camera. Because this is like a police interview. No offence. But do you know what I mean? As in, you are here with cameras and people, and therefore it's a very structured
You're on
thing.
the spot.
You're on the spot. Whereas with a podcast, you don't need so much stuff.
Yeah, there's more informality. But I mean, I don't.
So there's that, right? Number one. So the industry has changed. It's homogenized, and by that I mean less interesting things are being made for the sake of commerciality, for the sake of sales. Okay. So I can only use an example. The thing I'm making at the moment, although it's being greenlit by a studio, I still don't have all the money. So I've now got to raise money like a feature film for a TV project. And then I have to go to a sales agent or a distributor and say, please, Mr. Sales Agent or Distributor, will you please give me the rest of the money I need for this?
So they'll give you a percentage.
But then they'll say, who's in it? I go, oh, it's that, and that. So they look at their algorithms and go, oh, no, those actors won't give me a return. I need you to go for these actors. So immediately, everything is slightly shifting away from a personal vision to something that is homogenized by an industry and an algorithm that needs to make money.
Putting stuff in a blender, basically.
And you kind of have to go with that. And you hang on as a filmmaker, thinking, okay, fine, I can do that compromise, I can do that compromise. Which compromise can't I do? And I suppose I believe that once I've got those actors on set with a bunch of HODs, that we can do something interesting. But you have to be able to sell something before you make it. That's the industry that's changed.
Yeah, the model of how you fund it, because your ITVs and your BBCs, I mean, this is where I would observe it. Everyone, you say, oh, the industry is going for a period of change. They're like, yeah, but there's loads of drama on Netflix and stuff. And you're like, yeah, but this is now so elevated. Stranger Things was, I think, 35 million an episode.
No broadcaster can ever make anything like that.
No, ITV and BBC aren't.
You have to protect your BBC as a public service broadcaster. That'll do series like Prisoners of 951 or whatever.
Post Office and Mr. Bay.
Post Office and on ITV. These are things that don't sell anywhere. So they don't sell Post Office for a lot of money anywhere.
Well, you couldn't sell it in France or Germany or...
It didn't make any money.
No.
It was the most successful thing on ITV. So that's the kind of model I'm in, which is I might make something that's successful in the UK. It may get BAFTAs, etc., but it won't make any money.
No.
And the industry isn't interested in things that I do. So my world is shrinking because I don't do fantasy, I don't do action, I do thrillers, but I don't do big splashy things that get worldwide global viewing. I make bespoke UK stories for people here. I'm not looking over there, because to me it's never been an industry, whereas now it is an industry.
Yeah.
To me it's been, I can make an interesting thing for Channel 4 like Born to Kill. I can do, quite a hardcore thing for ITV, strangely, called Anne, about the Hillsborough. And BBC, I can do My Murder because it's a public service broadcaster. No one's going to take that. It's like the stories I want to make are a little bit niche, I suppose. But I do think I have a responsibility to make what I consider campaign-style telly, where I can transport you into a space which is you wouldn't normally go to. It's uncomfortable, and I think most people now want comfortable stuff, right? Not uncomfortable stuff.
Yeah.
They want everything needs to be comfortable.
Yeah.
The podcast isn't killing anything.
I don't think. I think the podcast is what I work in specialist documentary, and there's definitely less space for that kind of programming, because it would cost a relatively low budget thing that you're filming in the States and you might be filming in South America because you film, I don't know, you're going to film in an observatory and then you're going to film a scientist who works in Florida. You know, it might be 200, 250,000. And I think it's really hard to justify that spend because the patterns of how people watch stuff has changed. I mean, I don't think there's no difference to me between a podcast and what Michael Parkinson was doing on a chat show, or, you know, it's not a new formula. Like, we've always had TV shows that are 3 people sitting around in a panel chatting, but it's how people are now absorbing and watching and listening to the stuff that has changed. That, you know, the BBC, you can't really justify spending that money on that.
Straw poll, there's only 4 people here. Straw poll, right? Who watches BBC? Okay. Can I ask you what the last thing you watched on the BBC was?
The news. Women and Wildlife Doc. Traitors.
Traitors. I watch Traitors too. And who watches... Do you think you watch YouTube more than you watch a terrestrial channel?
Yeah.
Yes. And why is that, do you think?
It's mobile. I can walk around on my phone. It's a non-commitment.
There it is, right there. So that's the thing that I'm contending with, that things that I make, you need a certain amount of concentration for. I mean, there's now a thing, I don't know if you heard about this, where writers are now being asked by the studios, the bigger studios, to make dramas where the storylines aren't too complicated. So you can scroll at the same time as watching.
And they also do a lot in audio in terms of telling you what's happening, so that if you're looking at something else, you can follow. Matt Damon and Ben Affleck were talking about that with their latest film.
They were very happy with that.
Yeah.
You know, look, I think people always want to be transported, whether into a real space or fantasy space, and you can transport people in a rocket ship or a small bicycle. You know, as long as there's going to be a broad amount of transportation systems, they're going to take you to where you want to be. That's good. I think it's when you only have one form of transport controlled by one person, that's when it's problematic.
Yeah, and
we've all got to guard against the diminishing amounts of transport and delivery mechanisms for your stories.
Yeah, and also there is YouTube allows you to be very niche. Oh, are you? Hello? Are you coming in? At 2 o'clock? Okay, we'll go away. You might just wrap this up. Sorry, we've overrun. Sorry, we've overrun. No, all I was going to say is, I mean, I think that the industry is expanding hugely because the amount of content is much greater, but it's just in a very different way. So it's about how you adjust to that, I think.
Well, if you want to do anything that costs a lot of money, you've got to then bite the bullet and take various amounts of input from various amounts of sponsors or salespeople, which is going to diminish and make homogenized your idea. You have to be prepared for that.
And you're homogenized by algorithms as well. So.
But if you want to make an independent film and you want to raise money from different places, you can do what you like. And I think that's probably the most creative space to be in. Otherwise, you are literally. I mean, in fact, look, why should you not expect it? Like, everything costs. Like the drama I'm doing at the moment, it's low budget. It's $2 million an episode. That's a lot of money still. A hell of a lot of money. So, you know, people go, oh, it's so low, such a low budget. I go, but really, it's still £2 million that probably I'd prefer to put into some sort of famine fund than I would into a piece of telly.
Yeah.
You know, you should be making those choices in your head morally. You should be making
35 million an episode is kind of crank.
That's stupid.
But people love it. All right, well, thank you very much. We're going to have to go. Thank you for your time.
Pleasure.
I love your shirt, by the way.